Joe, he's not the typical hero. In fact, he's not a hero at all. He's a good person who's been blessed with a bit of character. Nothing about him you could say was particularly noteworthy. He isn't very smart or handsome or athletic or brave. Never really accomplished anything significant. Never really good with the ladies, and never had his 15 minutes of fame. And yet, for everything that Joe isn't and hasn't done, I still feel compelled to tell his story.
The story of Joe is actually the story of Job told in a modern setting. It's not specifically Job, but has an awful lot of parallels.
Life can be pretty complicated all by itself. It doesn't need our help.
The show at its core is about a man in his 50s to 60s looking back at his life and trying to decide whether or not it mattered.
Since the day he gave his heart to Tina, Joe's daily prayer had been that the Lord would take her first. He loved her that much.
There's a lot of themes in Joe. So one that stands out to me, I would say, is love. That Joe, as you see Joe's life, you just see how he loves on people and how the effect of his love is what actually makes an influence on them.
There are so many different themes in Joe, and I think one of the great things about Joe is that when people come to see Joe, I think they get what they need to out of it. One of the characters that always stuck out to me as being one of the strongest characters and just one of the coolest characters in the whole story is Zoe, who's Joe's first wife. I think what I really loved about that character is she was very much a prodigal.
I've hurt you so badly. I'm so sorry. You were right.
Ultimately, what I was trying to do was try to say, is a man's life valuable or productive because of what he does or because of who he is? I think what the story does is to build a case that a man is valuable because of who he is, and more specifically because of who made him.
And so you follow him from his birth and all the way through just different sets of tragedies happening to him in his life and dealing with how he dealt with them, going from the loss of his parents to entering into the Vietnam War, into dealing with issues of divorce and raising children and even, death and disease, and going through all of this. And through all of that, watching him and trying to figure out how he's going to deal with God and all that.
Commissioner, I ruled that this trade is not in the best interests of lunch. Joe, you have to take the apple. Okay.
Why are you friends with Joe again?
Because he's a nice kid. Besides, we have to be bestest of friends. We were born on the same day. Where are we, Joe?
Yep, September 28th, 1952.
Joe shows you that because of God's love, you should keep on continuing to love others because you can make a change in them and also a change in you.
What Joe has to ask is, in the midst of all this pain, the suffering, the loss, the heartache, is God still good?
What people respond to the most is that Joe is such a great example of what a Christian life can be. He's not perfect in any way. He doesn't really have any major gifts except he just loves people, loves God, loves people. That's all it can do.
Everyone is easy to love. It's just a decision that you have to make.
You've been through so much. You should have written a book.
I did. You. And your mother. And your sister. And everybody else I've ever known. The only thing we really leave behind are our memories in the hearts of those we love.
The theme of our life worth and our value being in who we are and who God created us to be rather than in what we do. And for me, that really strikes me at this point in my life because I'm a youth pastor. And in that area and being in ministry, God will remind me that it's not about me and that it's not about what I do, but it's about who He created me to be, and ultimately it's about Him.
Well, one of my favorite scenes is the very end of Act 1. Joe has come back from Vietnam and he's alone, and his pastor asks him to look after his teenage daughter who's just been in a car accident. She's suffering from almost complete short-term memory loss, and Joe doesn't realize what he's getting himself into, and it's a long who's on first routine. It's quite fun. A lot of people see that as their favorite scene.
Well, your parents told me you had a pretty rough time the last month or so.
Why? What happened?
Well, you don't remember?
Remember what?
You were in a car accident.
I was.
You don't remember?
Remember what?
The accident.
What accident?
You were in a car accident.
I was?
You don't remember?
Remember what?
Debbie, last month you were in a car accident.
I was? I don't remember that.
Oh, wow. Okay, it must have been quite a trauma.
Was I hurt?
Well, you hit your head.
I did on what?
On the frame of the windshield.
Windshield? What windshield?
The windshield of the car, the one you had the accident in.
What accident?
Yes, you were in a car accident.
I was?
You don't remember?
Remember what?
The accident.
What accident?
You were in a car accident.
I was?
You don't remember.
Remember what?
You know what?
I actually cannot think of one church that didn't respond with just absolute positive feedback. And I think every church we went to, there were people that would come up to us afterwards that were just very grateful and very responsive, and a lot of times people would come up with tears.
So, Joe, any word yet from colleges?
Yeah. Well, that word is no.
We knew the show was striking people at their home, and it was hitting where they're at.
It's one of the most popular shows we've ever had. I've had numbers of churches tell me that if we bring it back, we'll do multiple showings of it, which we're doing now. So that's why we're bringing it back 4 years later.
Well, I think a big thing is people don't know about this play, and they're kind of questioning, what is this going to happen? What's going to happen? What's it going to be like? Is it good for kids? Is it good for adults? And I think it's a very important play for everyone to see, from the smallest child to the oldest adult, because it takes place in a vast amount of time where everyone can relate.
And I think the people involved are not only devoted to the craft of theater, but to the ministry. And because of that, they're not doing this to promote themselves. They're promoting something much greater.
It's a good play to reach the youth of today, because history has a way of repeating itself. Even though they're going through a war, we're going through a war now.
At ease. Males in. Wojciechowski. Johnson. Norman. As you were. Everybody
always asks how much bringing Joe to a church costs in terms of financial costs, and it's really a question we prefer not to answer. All we ask for churches to do is to take a love offering. But we found after doing this for 10 years that if we just ask people for an offering and let God decide what we need, it always works out.
I guess I would just say to anyone that is interested in having Joe come to their church, or debating, not sure if they want it to, that it is worth it. And that the reason is that it is going to relate to people on their level. It's going to connect with them where they're at, and especially for any pastor, any church that's trying to communicate people's worth and communicate the influence of a Christian life, and how it's about testimony, how you live it, and not just what you say. They need to bring Joe to their church.
The only gift that little man had was love. And there was no one better at it.